Now, he's a prince of the Kalabari Kingdom, a successful businessman, respected philanthropist, acknowledged movie producer, prominent politician, and arguably one of the more influential Nigerians of his generation. But Tonye Princewill has been noticeably absent since 2022 amid all the crash and roar and fear and distrust of Nigerian politics. A former chieftain of the APC, Mr. Princewill, left the party in protest at that same faith ticket. But now he's back in the political realm, speaking about politics for the first time on television since 2022. So what does he have to say about the smouldering political tensions in his home state of Rivers and the country? Well, for his first television interview since 2022, I'm joined now on the line from Port Harcourt by the politician, movie producer and philanthropist, Prince Tonye Princewill. Great to see you, Prince, and thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Charles. It's my pleasure.
First of all, your thoughts on the passing of the former President Muhammadu Buhari.
Yeah, look, you know, they say at times like this, you need to extol the virtues and forgive the flaws. You know, we're all human and everyone has flaws. For me, all I can say is that I've met him on several occasions and I have nothing but nice things and good things to say about him. Unfortunately, the country has lost a great leader. It's very rare before you see patriots. One of the challenges that we have in our politics of today is that I don't see lots of people who love the country. General Buhari, you can say what you want about him, but he loved this nation. He was a patriot, and the country has lost a great person. Indeed.
And we all pray that he may find repose, his soul may find repose. Now, you've been yourself off the political radar for a few years now, and in fact, this is your first television interview on Nigerian politics since 2022, if I'm gauging it correctly. I mean, what's the motivation for getting you back into politics at this point?
Well, so I guess I want to just quickly correct two things. First of all, it's my first interview on politics since 2019. As regards getting into politics, I've never really left politics. I've always said that politics is too important to be left to politicians. So I've been there. I've been in the sidelines.
Let me just make a quick correction. I think your last interview was 2022, because we have a record of you coming into the studio to tell us that you were leaving the APC because of that same faith ticket. Correction, I didn't come into the studio. I sent my resignation letter to your team and many others, but I didn't physically come into the studio. In fact, I refused to talk about my resignation beyond sending out my press release. I have a record. Anyway, let's not get into that. I have a record of you in on our sort of records here of you actually having an interview. But anyway, let's move on from that. What is the motivation for you getting back into Nigerian politics at this point? No, I'm like I said, I've never really left. I've just declined from speaking publicly, especially when you look at what's going on in my state, Rivers State. You can see that there's been a lot of activity. I remember speaking to you once and telling you that even if you switched off the TV and came back a year later, Rivers State will still be in the politics. And so there's time enough to me to speak on the politics of Rivers State sometime in the future. So I've been there. I've been on the sidelines, obviously, speaking to people, talking to people, but I've not really been in the public gaze. And as you said, this was deliberate. Indeed. So given what you just said, and of course, given the backdrop of where you are, Port Harcourt, Rivers State, and the political crisis we know has unfolded there, I wonder what your assessment of the Nigerian political landscape is today, coming off the back of your sojourn away from this country's
political terrain. I mean, have you found it to be discomforting? Is there a lot of smiling through gritted teeth as you watch the direction this country's politics has been taking?
Yeah, well, look, it's very unfortunate. The politics is nothing to be proud of. As we travel, not just the country, but the world, we're constantly reminded of the negatives of politics. We always, I remember as a guy growing up, I always used to mentor young people, and I used to say to them that one of the qualities that you'd have to work with me is you have to be prepared to die for Nigeria. And I know it was difficult, but we found people who were prepared to do that. I have to say that compared to 2007 and now, the number of people who are prepared to die for Nigeria is becoming fewer and fewer. And this is really because they see that the country is not prepared to die for them. The leaders are not prepared to die for them. And so, unfortunately, when you look at our politics, there's very little that you can see and say is comforting. That's part of the reason why I've refused to speak. I think what I've been saying from day one, politics is too important to be left to politicians. It's all about the fact that we need new blood, fresh blood in the system. And we're not getting a lot of that fresh blood, unfortunately. Look at the coalition that just came up now. One of the challenges that I have, for instance, with that coalition is the absence of fresh blood. And until we can encourage the younger generation to start to take a more active role in our politics, I'm afraid that it's going to be business as usual.
It's very interesting that you bring up the coalition, because that was going to be my next question, and to ask you how this new ADC coalition has resonated with you, and how you think all this talk about that coalition is resonating with the public.
Well, I can't speak for the public. I know that I've put out my feelers, but personally, I'm a little disappointed, but it's still early days. There's time for them to get their act together. Unfortunately, what we saw in the recent emergence of the coalition is very much business as usual. The argument is that you can see what they're against, but you might not necessarily be able to see what they are for. And this is part of the problem that we have seen with our politics of today, where we have the absence of ideology. If you ask the average political party what is their policy on youth unemployment, they have none. If you ask them what's their policy on job creation, they have none. If you ask them what is their roadmap to prosperity, it's impossible to see. And unfortunately, the absence of ideology is a big vacuum. That is why, if you look at what happened in 2015, there was a conglomerate, a coalition, a convening of forces who were against Goodluck Jonathan. And of course, they took power, and after they took power, what next? So I can see that the ADC is coalescing, but they're not coalescing along an ideal. I expected them to coalesce along an ideal, and that ideal would strengthen their resolve. In the absence of an ideal, what you have is individuals who are coming together to take power. And if they seize power, there's no guarantee that it will not be business as usual. So I'm watching by the sidelines. I'm hopeful, because our democracy needs at least more than a one-party system. We need at least a two-party system, maybe more. But in the absence of an ideology or an ideal, then it's going to be business as usual. I must say, though, that I saw someone on the rise a few weeks ago, someone from the LND, the League of Northern Democrats. And for the first time, I heard somebody say something different. He said that they were coming together with a roadmap for prosperity in the North. Now, some might argue, why is he not talking about a roadmap for prosperity across the whole country? But he represents the League of Northern Democrats. So he was talking as a Northerner, and that is understandable. At the end of the day, we are Nigerians, yes, even though we're all beginning to feel more like I'm a Yoruba man, or I'm a Hausa man, or I'm an Igbo man, or I'm an Ijaw man. You know, we should be thinking we're Nigerians. But unfortunately, we're all thinking in our small, call them enclaves. If we had ideology and we had ideals, then we would be able to have principles, and people will know what you stood for, not only what you stand against.
You make some very, very solid points there, I have to say. But, I mean, I'm obviously not a spokesman for the coalition, but I think you're right to the extent that the public is yet to get the feeling that this coalition has anything more than wanting to get rid of President Tinubu. But in addition to the person you said you heard speaking previously, I've heard them say that they aim to build bridges across the ethnic divide to decrease political polarization in this country. And they say broadly that they want to tear down the rusty old political structures and the beams and the joints and rivets of the parties of old and build a new one from existing stone pillars, if you like. I mean, that's a big indictment of the way existing parties are run. Do you agree with them, or do you think it'll be quicker and easier to repair the existing parties?
It's not impossible to repair the existing parties, but like I said, the foundations have to be built on principles, ideals. In the absence of that, like I said, it will be business as usual. I remember back in the days when there was the SDP-NRC divide, there were policies, there were social policies associated with the SDP, and there were sort of, I would call them Republican policies associated with the NRC. And people chose which side of the divide they wanted to be. That was the military government trying to enforce ideology on the people. Until we find a new type of thinking that will allow for people to understand that they would have to have a roadmap built on policies that were built on ideals. Unfortunately, what I'm hearing from both parties is rhetoric. My movie-making experience tells me that it will make a very good script, but I'm not sure that it will make a very good country. And my challenge is that if I tell people to come alongside me to work with a political party, I want to be able to convince them that in the event that that political party wins an election, that political party will actually be able to move Nigeria forward. Yes, people might have challenges with Tinubu. That's understandable, that's acceptable. But can we ask ourselves some very basic questions? Does the system actually work? Is our problem the president? Is our problem not the system? If we change the president and the system remains the same, will we not come back 4 years later having the same conversation? So I'm not interested in deceiving people that work with me, and I'm not deceived by people who I see working in the political space. Until I see people who are prepared to address these key issues, I'm afraid that I will be sitting down where I've been since 2022, which is neutral, and watching what's going on.
But, I mean, you have acknowledged that, I mean, it's happened in the past that, you know, people have come in and formed a coalition and got rid of an existing sort of government. Is it fathomable to you that this ADC coalition could turn a political trick, if you like, on a sixpence and win the 2027 presidential election, or is that just talk at this stage?
No, it's not impossible. I think APC would be unwise to underestimate what the ADC is doing. There's a lot of dissatisfaction with the APC government out there in the outer space. The people of Nigeria are not happy. If you took a poll, a genuine poll, you will see that. So there is every chance that ADC can actually win the next election. It's not impossible. But for you to defeat APC, you'd have to come with more than what I have seen so far. The reality of it is, at the end of the day, is that it's not just about winning. It's about actually winning for the country, not just for yourselves. So for me, the priority has to be not just winning, but moving the country forward. We travel the world, you travel the world, and you see what successive governments can do. Nigeria, we complain. When it was Obasanjo, they wanted him out. When it was Yar'Adua, they wanted him out. When it was Goodluck, they wanted him out. When it was Buhari, they wanted him out. And now we have Tinubu and they want him out. When are we going to start to see that it is not just about the president, it's about the presidents, it's about the governors, it's about the legislatures, it's about the National Assembly members, not just at the national level, but also at the state level. So it's a whole systemic challenge. And of course, I will not rule out the judiciary. The judiciary is also part of the problem as well. So until you can start to address these key issues, I'm afraid we're going to come back 4 years later saying we want the next person out. I often ask people, in the absence of Tinubu, who would you want? And then you'll hear a myriad of voices, like Tower of Babel. Unfortunately, we need to start to have leaders that think. I've seen countries who sit back and plan their way out of problems. Whether it was the Labour Party coming up with a New Deal in the United Kingdom, whether it was the emergence of Obama and what he did in the USA, you don't just come with a president, you come with a system, you come with a correction, you come with a plan. And unfortunately, I don't know, maybe our leaders are too old to do the thinking or the homework, but people need to sit down and start to plan. We have a problem with our constitution. Is amending it the right thing? Should we be doing a referendum? Should there be a plebiscite? There's so many fundamental issues that are plaguing this country. And until we start to see a political party or a group of people who are prepared to do something about this, I'm afraid it's going to be business as usual, and I will be having none of it.
And I mean, away from the world of national politics, given what has happened in your state, Rivers, in the last few months, I mean, do you think democracy is on the forward march or on a backward slide in this country? I mean, what's your sort of concern in that area?
Yeah, I mean, with Rivers State, obviously it's a peculiar situation. I don't have the full facts, but I've gathered enough information to see that the emergency rule option that the president took had some merit in the context of stopping the slide to chaos, which was imminent. I don't agree with everything that has been done. I would rather not have seen that, but we had a situation where the political class was completely unable to come to a resolution, and what was going to happen was going to be chaos, nothing short of that. So I saw that as a bit of a doctrine of necessity. If I was the president with all the facts in front of me, I might have taken a different decision, but alas, I am not, and I cannot say that there was a way around it. But I'm looking now to where we are, which is that we've seen the political gladiators sheath their swords. There's some level of peace and progress that has come from that. I think we should be able to build on that. And we should recognize that if the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. So we are happy that there's some level of peace. I would like to have a different voice, a more discerning voice, to say that what we need is peace. I'm not a fan of the system that brought out Fubara, but he came, he was pronounced governor. We have to work with him. And he has to work with the people that worked with him to bring him out. I mean, it just is the natural law. So yes, what we're seeing in River State cannot be described as height of or the sort of merits of democracy. Far from it. But we are where we are, and rather than doing Monday night quarterback, I'd much rather we move forward.
Well, I mean, just picking up on what you were saying there, particularly the difficulties, you know, from what I've heard from a lot of people, that this state of emergency adds to the already complex political situation facing the people of River State, and what appears to be the rollback of their democratic rights and sovereignty that's been unleashed by the imposition of an administrator. I mean, people have expressed that opinion, and quite a lot of people. But, I mean, let me not dwell on that, because we've just got a couple more minutes left. I mean, you said that a lot of people are unhappy with what is happening with governance in Nigeria under President Tinubu. Are you unhappy with it yourself?
Of course I am. I'm unhappy with it, yes. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But, you know, like I said, it's a systemic problem. Whoever is going to be president tomorrow will have to deal with some of these same issues. I want to go to the scenario in Rwanda, for instance. The truth of the matter, if anybody wants to be genuinely honest with you, the only way we can truly get this country out is we need change in system, there has to be some kind of a benevolent dictator, someone who is at the top of the chain but cares about the people and is genuinely interested in moving the country forward. And to do that, sometimes you have to be a bit of a strong man. That is the reality. We live in a country where sometimes our people are pretty stubborn. And a strong hand and leading by example is very important. If you take this crop of leaders and bring in another crop of leaders, there's every likelihood that you will be in a similar situation, if not worse. So you need a strong leader who leads by example, who can set the stage, and you need to have consequences for bad behavior. If you did that, you would have the beginnings of a solution. We look at countries like Rwanda and we see them moving forward. We look at countries like China and we see them moving forward. You know, you can go to some of these countries and you will see that it requires a bit of a strong hand. So the fact that you need a strong hand is nothing short of the reality. I remember we're talking about Buhari now, God rest his soul. When he was president in his first term, we saw what he went through with the legislature and the judiciary. It was very difficult for him to even pass a budget. So even if you mean well as a president and you do not have a control of the legislature, you will go very, 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 very far backwards. So it's the unfortunate reality of the situation we're in. And if anybody wants to be honest with you, you cannot be a successful president unless you have a good, very supportive legislature behind you. Now we have the president, he has all of that, so he has to make sure that he delivers. But I said in a recent interview I gave when I was in Abuja, I said to them, I said, look, as it stands right now, he has 2 years. So anybody who is counting him out at this point doesn't know the man. I know him very well, I know Atiku very well, I know a lot of members of the ADC coalition very well. Some of these leaders ultimately listen. And if they get a sense of what will make them win an election, they will make the correction before the time. So the Tinubu you're seeing today, probably looking very vulnerable, may not be the same Tinubu that you'll see in a year and a half or 2 years' time. So the coalition has to be prepared for that.
On that note, I want to say it's been absolutely brilliant talking with you, and it's good to have you storming back into the world of politics and interviewing.
I never left, Charles. I never left.
Yeah, you said so. Well, it's good to have you back. The politician, movie producer, and philanthropist, Prince Tonye Princewill, who is, of course, a prince of the Kalabari Kingdom, as well as a successful businessman. Thank you very much indeed. And he was talking to me on the line from Port Harcourt. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja and Port Harcourt, bye-bye and thank you for watching.